that footage would be confiscated if somebody tried to cross the border.
Exactly, and the only way we are getting information really is by speaking to people who've just crossed or managing to get through to people in AlJazeera. We've spoken to them and also people who've just come from another town which is closer to us, about 50 kilometers away, called Zuera. Now what they have told us is that these two towns are in the hands of the people. They've managed to burn down police stations. They've managed to just to get rid of the army and the police who are close to Gaddafi, who are now on the outskirts of this town. But it's a very uncertain situation, and people are trying to dig in defensively to prevent another attack. There have been attacks, people have died, that's what we're being told. But what they're trying to do is to build up their defences just in case the Gaddafi military and pro-Gaddafi forces try to attack them once again.
Nazneen, thanks a lot for the moment. Ras AlJazeera is the location. Nazneen Moshiri is there for us. Let's go to the other end of the country and cross the border into Egypt, just on the other side of the fence. Jamal al-Shayal is there. Jamal, I've got a little bit of text here from the Imam on Libyan state television and what he had to say to those listening in to his Friday sermon. He said that those who call for chaos will not be forgiven on the day of judgment. He's also said in the sermon that the people must stay away from incitements and work for unity, and whoever disobeys the ruler is disobeying God. Stark contrast to the sermons that you were listening to being broadcast on the airwaves in the east of the country.
Indeed, Amran, the sermons we are listening to are that those who sacrifice their lives in opposition to an oppressor and a tyrant will be rewarded by God on the day of judgment, and that it was the duty of every single Muslim and everyone who believed in God to uprise against oppression and to demand freedom. So they are extremely contrasting messages. However, it seems from the reports that we're getting and from the people we're speaking to that the latter message, that of defiance towards Gaddafi, the so-called tyrant, by those people is being heeded much, much more than that of the state-sponsored imams in the mosques of Tripoli. Having said that, we just spoke to someone who had gotten off the phone from relatives in Tripoli, saying that they were preparing for large demonstrations in the Libyan capital against Gaddafi. Obviously, in the past days, whenever they have tried to mobilize, there has been a huge crackdown. If we remember and recall the first couple of days when they tried to march towards As-Sah al-Khadra, the green square in the center of town, there was live fire reported there and people reportedly killed. So if those numbers do increase and if those people are able to mobilize on the streets of the capital and march towards the center, we could very well see, or at least hear of, depending on the freedom of media there, of more bloodshed in the center of the city, Amran.
Okay, Jabal, thanks a lot for that for the moment, live from Saloum, which is on the other side of the border. It's on the Egyptian side of the border with Libya on the east. These pictures from Benghazi. Look at that, children riding on top of the shoulders of their parents in Benghazi, and massive crowds, as our guest here, Ibrahim Jibril, has told us. He's from Benghazi and he's never seen anything like this in his life. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, difficult to estimate, of people around Friday prayers. There was the sermon and then the prayers, and people are sticking around now to protest and shout slogans against Muammar Gaddafi and his rule. They had all sorts of banners and placards against him. And these pictures from Baghdad, the Iraqi capital, and people there protesting against corruption and poor living conditions. Not only protesting in Baghdad, but across Iraq, with some instances of violence reported. At least 2 people have been killed in the northern city of Hawija. And here in Baghdad, we heard that the protesters were squaring off against riot police. Let's join AlJazeera's Jane Araf, who's there for us over the phone. Jane, what's the atmosphere right now?
Well, it ebbs and flows. It was, as you mentioned earlier, quite tense as riot police gathered on a bridge that they had blocked off with huge concrete glass barriers to prevent people from going across to reach anywhere even close to the green zone where the government is. Some of these protesters started to throw stones and smash big rocks and throw and anything they could find. The riot police rushed forward, throwing open their arms and basically, in some cases, slamming people against the walls. It's calmed down now. They're both on the bridge on opposite sides, and there are, if you will, alternate demonstrations happening all over the square. A lot of people here have here for many hours, and most of them walked miles. And all of them, no matter what they're here for, say this is not sectarian, this is not political. This is a sign of what appears to be quite broad-based popular discontent at the government that they believe they should have but don't.
You say broad-based popular discontent. What are the demographics of those people that you've come across at the demonstration?
They started off as young men. Along with the rest of the city, we had to walk here as well. And as we were walking down the streets, deserted of all traffic except for military vehicles and police vehicles, it was mostly young men who were coming here because this was a long way away. But as we got here, and as things went on later in the afternoon, women started to arrive. There are women's groups, there are children, and really what it is it's a cross-section of people who feel passionate about this, and many of them were actually driven by Prime Minister Maliki's warnings not to come, that they felt no matter how hard the journey, how many the risks, they actually had to come here. It's still going on, and it doesn't actually show any signs of abating.
Jane, thanks for that. Keep us updated from the Liberation Square in Baghdad. Now, Egyptians are keeping up pressure on the transitional government with many thousands turning out in Cairo's Tahrir Square after Friday prayers. They want the military leaders to appoint a new cabinet and end the decades-old emergency rule in the country. Well, Hassan Nafia is a professor of political science at Cairo University and also one of the thousands of protesters voicing their demands at Tahrir Square. And he joins us live on the line from Cairo. Mr. Nafia, thank you very much for joining us. Why the need to take to Liberation Square now when Hosni Mubarak is gone and there are assurances that over the next 6 months major changes will be made?
Well, a big rally is here. I hear you in a very difficult way, but if you can hear me, I just say I am in the middle of the Tahrir Square, the Liberation Square, and the people here are chanting against the government. They wanted to topple the government. They consider that the revolution is continued, and they will not stop rallying before achieving the goals of the revolution. The president has been removed, but the remains of the regime is still here.